If a woman suddenly pulls away from you, goes quiet, stops replying the way she used to, your instinct is to panic. Your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and you start asking yourself one dangerous question. What did I do wrong? And that question right there is where most men lose their power. Before we go deeper, take a second, subscribe to the channel and like this video, because what you're about to understand might completely change how you handle attraction, respect, and emotional control. Listen carefully. When a woman ignores you, it doesn't always mean she's losing interest. But how you react to that silence, that determines everything. Most men collapse in that moment. They double text, they over-explain, they try to fix something that hasn't even been clearly broken. And in doing so, they communicate something without words. Desperation. Not love, not care, desperation. And here's the truth most people won't tell you. Attraction doesn't grow in an environment of emotional pressure. It suffocates. When she pulls back, she's watching, even if it doesn't seem like it. She's observing how stable you are without her constant validation. She's measuring your emotional independence. Because deep down, every woman is asking one silent question. Is this man centered in himself? Or does he fall apart when I step away? So when you panic, chase, and flood her with attention, you answer that question in the worst possible way. But when you don't panic, when you stay composed, when you lean back instead of lunging forward, something very different happens. You become unpredictable. And unpredictability, when paired with emotional control, creates curiosity. Curiosity is the seed of attraction. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding human psychology at a deeper level than surface emotions. Because the man who understands silence controls the emotional frame. Right now, you're being tested, not by her words, but by her absence. And if you respond like every other man, you'll get the same outcome as every other man. But if you respond differently, you shift the entire dynamic without saying a single word. You need to understand something most men never truly grasp. Silence is not rejection, it's information. And the moment you stop interpreting her distance as a threat, you start seeing it for what it really is, a shift in energy. When a woman ignores you, your mind tries to fill in the gaps. You imagine the worst. You picture her losing interest, talking to someone else, moving on without you. And those thoughts trigger urgency. That urgency pushes you to act. But those actions? They're usually driven by fear, not strength. And fear is felt, even through a screen. A woman may not respond to your message, but she can feel the emotional weight behind it. She can sense when you're seeking reassurance instead of offering presence. And that's where attraction quietly begins to fade. Because attraction thrives in emotional steadiness. Think about it. The man who is calm, grounded, and unshaken by temporary distance, he stands out. Not because he's doing more, but because he's reacting less. That's the shift you need to make. Instead of asking, "Why is she ignoring me?" ask yourself, "Why am I so affected by it?" That question changes everything, because now the focus is back on you, your emotional control, your inner stability. You see, when your mood depends on her attention, you hand over your power without realizing it. You become reactive instead of intentional. And once that happens, you're no longer leading the interaction, you're chasing it. And chasing creates imbalance. But when you pause, when you sit with that discomfort instead of trying to escape it, you build something rare, emotional discipline. That discipline is attractive because it's uncommon. Most men don't have it. Most men act on impulse. They reach out too soon, say too much, reveal too much, all because they can't tolerate uncertainty. But you're not most men. You're learning to stay still when everything inside you wants to move. And in that stillness, something powerful begins to happen. You stop needing her response to feel okay. And ironically, that's when your presence starts to feel stronger, even in your absence. Because energy doesn't disappear when you go quiet, it concentrates. And when she senses that shift, when she realizes you're not reacting the way she expected, that's when her curiosity starts to turn back toward you. Now here's where it becomes uncomfortable. Because doing the right thing when a woman ignores you feels completely wrong at first. Your instinct is to reach out, to check in, to fix the silence. But the truth is, silence doesn't need fixing. It needs understanding. When you immediately react, you remove all space, and space is where attraction breathes. So instead of chasing, you do something that most men are too afraid to do. You step back. Not to manipulate, not to punish, but to return to yourself. Because when a woman pulls away, it's not an invitation for you to abandon your center. It's an opportunity to strengthen it. You go back to your routine, your purpose, your work, your physical and mental discipline. You stop orbiting around her attention and start anchoring into your own life again. And something subtle begins to shift. You're no longer waiting, you're living. That difference is everything. Because the man who is waiting feels heavy, needy, predictable. But the man who is living? He feels expansive, grounded, free, and freedom is magnetic. A woman may not consciously analyze it this way, but she feels it. She notices when your energy isn't wrapped around her anymore. She senses when your focus has shifted back to your own path. And that creates a psychological tension. Not pressure, tension. Pressure pushes people away. Tension pulls them in. When you're always available, always responding instantly, always emotionally invested at the same level regardless of her behavior, there's no tension, no mystery, no space for her to lean toward you. But when you pull your energy back, not aggressively, not dramatically, just naturally, you create contrast. And contrast creates attention. This is why disappearing for a while without making an announcement, without playing games, can be incredibly powerful. Because now, she doesn't know exactly where she stands. And that uncertainty, the same feeling that once made you anxious, now starts working in your favor. But here's the key. This only works if it's real. If you're pretending to be busy while constantly checking your phone, you haven't changed anything. The shift has to happen internally. You're not stepping back to get a reaction. You're stepping back because you respect your own time, your own energy, and your own emotional stability. And when that becomes your baseline, you stop reacting to silence, and you start mastering it. There is a moment in every interaction where power quietly shifts. Not through words, not through arguments, but through behavior. When a woman goes silent, she is not only evaluating you, she is also evaluating how you handle uncertainty. And uncertainty is where most men expose themselves. The urge to resolve things immediately feels logical, but in reality, it often comes from discomfort, not clarity. You want closure, you want reassurance, you want to know where you stand. But the man who constantly seeks clarity from someone who is withdrawing ends up giving away his emotional positioning. Here's what happens beneath the surface. When you chase answers too quickly, you signal that her attention is more valuable than your own peace of mind. And once that signal is established, the dynamic subtly shifts. Not because she consciously decides to lose interest, but because attraction responds to perceived value, not just words. So instead of reaching out repeatedly, you observe. You allow her silence to exist without trying to overwrite it. And in that space, you regain control of your emotional state. This doesn't mean you become cold or detached from reality. It means you stop over-investing in outcomes you cannot control. Because the more you try to control her response, the less control you actually have over yourself. Now here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Her ignoring you is not a command for action. It's a moment for calibration. You recalibrate your attention back to what is stable, what is productive, and what is within your influence. Your routines, your goals, your health, your mindset. When those areas are strong, her silence doesn't destabilize you. It becomes background noise instead of emotional disruption. And when she eventually returns, and many times she will, you won't meet her from a place of emotional scarcity. You'll meet her from a place of balance. That balance is felt instantly, because now you're not reacting to her presence, you're choosing how to engage with it. And choice is powerful. A man who can walk away mentally, even while remaining respectful, is no longer easily controlled by the emotional highs and lows of someone else's behavior. He becomes anchored. And an anchored man does not drift every time the tide changes. He remains steady, regardless of who comes and goes. At some point, you have to accept a truth that most men resist. Not every silence deserves your energy, and not every woman is meant to meet you at the level you're willing to show up. When a woman ignores you, it can mean many things. She's busy, she's overwhelmed, she's unsure, or she's simply not prioritizing the interaction. But your responsibility is not to decode every possible reason. Your responsibility is to respond in a way that protects your self-respect. Because self-respect is not something you declare, it's something you demonstrate through your behavior. If someone repeatedly shows you distance, inconsistency, or lack of effort, and you continue to chase, you're communicating that your standards are flexible. And when standards become flexible, attraction becomes unstable. Instead of trying to pull her back in, you ask yourself a more grounded question. Is this dynamic aligned with what I actually want? That question puts you back in control. You're no longer the one hoping to be chosen. You're the one deciding whether this connection deserves your time. And that subtle shift in mindset changes how you carry yourself. You stop over-investing in potential and start observing reality. You stop filling gaps with assumptions and start responding to patterns. If her behavior is inconsistent, you match that with calm detachment, not emotional chasing. If her communication returns with genuine effort, you respond accordingly without overcompensating. This is not about withdrawing to create a reaction, it's about maintaining equilibrium regardless of her behavior. Because the moment you attach your emotional state to how someone else treats you, you lose stability. And stability is attractive. Not loud confidence, not forced charisma, but quiet internal stability. The kind that doesn't get shaken by a delayed reply. The kind that doesn't interpret silence as a personal failure. The kind that understands that your value does not fluctuate based on someone else's attention. When you operate from that place, your decisions become cleaner. Your responses become measured. Your presence becomes intentional. And ironically, that's often when people begin to re-engage, not because you chased them, but because you stopped. Because now they sense something different. You're not orbiting them anymore. You've returned to your own center. Now let's bring this all together, because this is where everything either clicks or falls apart, depending on whether you apply it. When a woman ignores you, the average man reacts emotionally. He sends multiple messages, tries to regain attention, or starts overthinking every detail of the last interaction. That reaction comes from a place of attachment without stability. But the man who understands what's happening internally does something very different. He observes first, then chooses. He doesn't assume the worst immediately. He doesn't assign meaning to silence without evidence. He allows space to exist without rushing to fill it. And in that space, he maintains his routine, his discipline, and his direction. This is not about pretending not to care. It's about not losing yourself in someone else's temporary behavior. Because her attention may fluctuate, but your standards, your habits, and your sense of self should not. When you stop reacting impulsively, you create emotional consistency. And emotional consistency builds respect, not just from others, but from yourself. And here's something important to understand. If she is genuinely interested, your calm, non-reactive behavior will not push her away. In many cases, it will do the opposite. It removes pressure, restores balance, and allows her to re-engage without feeling overwhelmed. But if she doesn't return, if the silence continues, that also gives you clarity. And clarity is not something to fear, it's something to value, because it prevents you from investing time, energy, and emotion into a dynamic that isn't reciprocated. So instead of seeing her ignoring you as a problem to solve, you start seeing it as information to interpret and a situation to respond to with self-respect. You don't chase what withdraws. You don't panic over what pauses. You remain steady, focused, and grounded in your own life. Because at the end of the day, your ability to stay composed when things are uncertain is not just about dating. It reflects who you are as a man. And the man who can stay calm in silence is the man who no longer needs to prove his worth through someone else's response.